So I was asked to talk about some of the educational tools that we can offer through NEJM, and I will just point out that there is an obvious conflict of interest here. I work for NEJM Group for part of my time. The good news, though, is that very little of what I'm going to be talking about is actually costing you anything. Most of this is available for free through the Brigham, so I don't get any more money for whether you choose to use this or not. Just so that said, so I'll be talking a little bit about some of the content that is available via NEJM, and talk a little bit about how you can incorporate that into your teaching. One question that I do get sometimes is why is NEJM involved in teaching? It's a medical journal, and typically we don't think of medical journals as having a big role in medical education. So I really want to kind of give kudos here to Dr. Jeff Drazen, who's the previous editor-in-chief of NEJM, who said that sort of the future of the publishing industry will rely a lot on medical education. So he created this entity called NEJM Group, which is under the umbrella of the Massachusetts Medical Society. And it fits with part of the mission statement of the Massachusetts Medical Society, which is to advance medical knowledge. And that has been sort of thought of primarily as publishing research, but advancing medical knowledge certainly involves also medical education. So we have a whole education group, and there are many ways to be a medical educator. In this room, we have representatives, I think, of every type of medical education. Many are teachers and instructors. Many are administrators running courses, running programs of various kinds. And some are education researchers. So I just want to give an initial nod to the educational researcher. These are two publications that were published in the New England Journal of Medicine in the past decade or so, both with BWH authors. This one has all BWH authors on the left, and you'll recognize certain Brigham names on the Duty Hour study also. So you can publish medical education research in the New England Journal of Medicine, and think of us. But for the rest of the session, I will be talking primarily about what sort of products we have available, what sort of offerings we have available for your teaching, for your administration, and for your own learning. It has some curated content from the NEJM products at large, the journal, and so on. And it also has certain things that are created specifically for Resident 360. So in the case of the program director, well, she could point her residents to the so-called rotation prep. So there's a link up here at the top, rotation prep. And I'm going to change rotation here. And you can see the list here of internal medicine and pediatrics. And let's go to pediatrics. Now, this product is one that is right this second, it is available free. In a couple of months, it will be available with a subscription, either on its own or together with some of the other educational products. However, the only part that you would have to pay for is what I'm about to show you, which are the rotation preps. Some of them are free and will be free forever, and those critical care is one of them. So in the rotation prep material, there is basically material that the residents can read to really help them hit the ground running. When they show up on Tuesday morning at their rotation, they will already have a starting point. So there is the fast facts section is really the kind of highest yield facts that they need to know. And here you see, as a pediatric ICU resident, you want to know about sepsis and shock. But there's also an opportunity to take a bit of a deeper dive. We have listed some of the maybe highest yield research studies and some of the guidelines so that people can go ahead and look into some of this in more detail. So while we are in Resident 360, I'm just going to show you a couple of other features also, so that you have a sense of what else is available. And everything else that I'm going to show you is free, will remain free, and will be available at this URL. You do have to register, but beyond that, it's available for free. The Learning Lab. So this is where there's a whole lot of learning tools, interactive learning tools, teaching tools, and so on. That's curated specifically for residents. We're going to be looking at most of these in some more detail as we go on, but I did want to show one feature, which is the Curbside Consults, which is a podcast that we have every 2 weeks, talking about a mix of clinical topics, as well as more sort of journal-like topics, shall we say, things like study design, how to read a study. We are actually about to launch a series on diversity and equity in medicine, which I'm very excited about. This can also be downloaded for free through your Apple Podcast app or whichever app you use. The Resident Lounge is up here. This has a collection of various blogs that are helpful as a resident. I'll maybe show you just one in particular. Here's one on a blog post, on surviving your first month as a doctor. Very popular, and as you can imagine, these are very helpful for the residents as they're starting their career. There are, for those that are sort of looking ahead to their career, there are more career resources under the career tab. So there are certainly some blog posts, there is exam prep suggestions, and you can click through here to the NEJM Career Center. And I wouldn't mind moving to the Berkshires for an endocrinology opportunity, but anyway. So that's in the career. What we found was that medical students really enjoyed a lot of this content. So we created a separate student corner. This is meant primarily for medical students. And this is where we put some of the material that is perhaps particularly relevant to the medical student. And so that, there's a variety of formats that you can go through here. That includes podcasts, that includes blog posts, and so on. So then we have our discussions. So the discussions are on a variety of topics related to career, related to more kind of typical medical topics, related to societal topics. The current discussion is, do I need an online presence? I'm sure Christina Zara would say yes, you need to be on social media because if you're a doctor, you're missing out if you're not. But here you can see, people are asking questions and sort of discussing, how do you build connections online and so on. And the topics rotate every couple of weeks. There are opportunities here to connect with other members. I think this is probably not one of the ones that are used the most. Let's see if Eric is on this. You're not on Resident 360, Eric. You're not a resident, I guess. But I will say, if you put in Katz and see if our beloved leader Joel Katz is right there. So there are ways of connecting. And finally, the challenge. We did a challenge earlier this year where residents could submit their QI projects and get it evaluated by experts. And in the end, we had a winning submission from talking about opioid prescribing. So this is currently we have no active challenge. This was our first attempt at this. So a lot of very, different things you can pick and choose from. So I'm going to move on to sort of our second case. So this is still the pediatrics program director who is now getting some feedback from the faculty members, the other faculty members, that the residents' medical knowledge really doesn't seem to be quite up to par. And you've also noticed that your pass rate on the PEDS boards has declined in recent times. And so you're worried and you're thinking, how can I address this? So this is my opportunity to show you the next offering. And this is one that comes at a cost and is called NEJM Knowledge Plus. And it's basically, the easy way to describe it is that it's a question bank. But it has some features that are pretty neat, I think. So Knowledge Plus is created both for trainees and so for residencies and training programs, but also for clinicians. So getting back to sort of the theme of this series about your CPD, you can get your CME and CPD credit through, sorry, CME and MOC credit through this product. There is an internal medicine focused question bank, there's a pediatrics question bank, and there's also a family medicine question bank. And there are about 4,000 questions in the internal medicine product. They're written by specialists and vetted through numerous layers. And I'll just tell you that I just did my 10-year MOC exam, and it was really a breeze, and this was a great preparation for that. So there's a plug for that. So I'm going to actually show you a question. So I will be asking you to use Poll Everywhere in a second. So have a browser available, and let me switch my share to this guy. All right. So, all right. So here we go. This is from the pediatrics product, and I don't think that there are many pediatricians on this one, so this will be a challenge for you. So go to the email address on the top, pollev.com/nejmedu, and choose your answer. So which of the following next steps is most appropriate for a full-term, 1-hour-old male infant who's in respiratory distress, hypoxic, has a scaphoid abdomen, no breath sounds in the left chest, but there are abdominal contents in the left thoracic cavity on chest radiograph? So when you go to this email address, you should be able to select your answer. And feel free to guess. I did not know this until I pulled the PEDS question to look at it. All right, 4 results. All right, I will 5, 6, excellent, 7. All right, so let's see what you all answered. All right, so most of you want to give surfactant, and some of you had other thoughts. And then stay on the webpage, because now I'm going to move on to the next slide. Here we go, which is how confident are you in the answer that you provided? All right, so good. So we got 7 and 9 responses. Okay, great. All right, so most of you were unsure, and so this feature is key to how Knowledge Plus works, because it is really using an adaptive platform. So meaning that it looks not only at how whether you got the answer right or wrong, but also how confident you were. And based on that, if you answer something correctly and you're very confident, the platform will basically say, okay, you know this, I don't need to show you questions like this anymore. But if you're getting it right, but you're kind of unsure, you might see similar questions again to sort of reinforce what you learned. I'll tell you that the correct answer for this question, if I go back, the correct answer was to intubate the patient. This is, I guess, a condition, I forget even the name, but it's when you have abdominal contents in the thorax. So it was appropriate that most of you were unsure, because most of you got this question wrong. If you are a program director, you get certain reports that are pretty helpful that you can kind of click through to see how your residents are doing. And so you can see how people are progressing, whether they're spending time answering questions. These are individual residents, and you can see how much time they have spent. Pat has spent a bunch of time, but some of the others here, FIR, doesn't seem like they've done all that much. You can also see sort of some crude data on how they're doing in terms of percent correct. But you can also pull, like, what are my residents struggling with? And if you see that in cardiology, like all of the arrhythmia questions seem to be difficult, all right, well, now you know that there's an opportunity there for you to adapt your curriculum to address the gap that you've identified through this. But you can also see, the metacognitive skills. So how confident are they? And, just to give you a sample here, for example, the top one here is mostly correct and aware. So it's pretty rare for this person to be to be incorrect and unaware. So meaning that they answer it wrong and they say, I'm sure that I'm right. So this person, you might say, okay, they have a pretty good sense of themselves and where their knowledge is. I would be much more worried about the second to the bottom one. Half of the questions they're getting wrong, but they're stating that they're confident about their answer. This is kind of someone that you should be a little worried about, like walking around on the wards, making very confident decisions, but half of the time they're wrong. So it really allows you another level of knowledge about your residents. There are practice exams that you can do, either pre-made or you can create them yourself, and you can sort of see how people are doing and what sort of results they are obtaining. So I'm going to go back to my browser, because the theme of the series is CME, CPD, and I've shown you a lot of resident stuff. But if you go into for clinicians here, you get to and you're a subscriber. You get to basically the product itself, and you can, as you can see, I've got some MOC and CME from doing questions in our question bank. I will point out that the pain management and opioids one is actually available for free. You do have to register, but it's available for free. We got a grant to cover this, and it's a good way to get your CME credit, which is required, I think, in most states for opioid management specifically. And then when you go in, you will see questions. Well, you say how confident you are, and that helps the adaptive algorithm know what questions to start off with. And then you get questions very similar to what I just showed you, with possible answers, and you have to say how confident you are. So that's Knowledge Plus. All right, we're going to go back to our cases again. So now I'm at case 3. So this time you are an orthopedic doctor. You are precepting a resident. It's an intern, just started. They presented a case to you, and as they present the case, you realize this person has no idea how to examine a shoulder. But you look at the time, you realize you have to be in the operating room really 10 minutes ago, so you don't really have time to go and spend a lot of time going through the steps in a shoulder exam. So you give her the feedback and you say you really should go back and review the shoulder exam. And she asks you, well, do you have any, like, how do I do that? Like, if you can't show me, like, how do I actually get to this? So that is my excuse to show you some of the videos that we have. So I'm now on the NEJM, the main page of NEJM. And if you go to multimedia, we have a bunch of videos in clinical medicine. And these videos in clinical medicine, they cover many procedures. You can see here, how to do a tracheostomy, how to don and doff personal protective equipment. That one was put together, as you can imagine, quickly back in the spring. Same with the nasopharyngeal swab. But there are also physical exam ones. So this is examination of the hand and the wrist. So let me just go to the shoulder one, which is here. So you can tell her, go to NEJM, go to the videos, and find the shoulder video. And you will have a narrated video, and we'll see how well this translates through Zoom. But I will show you just a brief little, few seconds of it.
The rotator cuff are the supraspinatus,
do you get the audio?
teres minor, and subscapularis.
Yeah.
The supraspinatus muscle allows the arm to abduct. Test its function using the empty can test. Have the patient abduct the arms to 90 degrees with palms facing the floor.
All right, so just showing you a brief little clip of what that looks like. This is a 12-minute video, so a little bit on the long side, but it goes through the entire shoulder exam. I will say these videos are often used in the ICU also, sort of looking at the procedures and the steps to go through before doing the procedure, right before you go into the patient to put in the central line or the arterial line or whatever. All right. So we're going to move on to our next case. So this is now your faculty member in charge of a journal club for the residents. And so usually you've had 2 residents choose an article, send it out to the residency so that they can read it. and then the residents lead a discussion basically about the journal. But it sort of hasn't been a great success. It's kind of poorly attended. Some people show up and they say it's mostly for the free lunch. And the residents that do show up say they really don't have time to read the article. And so when it comes time to kind of have a discussion or a conversation, they just can't really partake. And you're also actually at a community site, a community program. And so you don't actually have a lot of experts that can kind of weigh in with some gravitas. So how could you remedy this? So I will show you a few tricks that you can use for kind of a journal club type of thing. So firstly, I'll show you what's called the quick takes. And I'm going to show you just because I'm endocrine. I'll see if I can find the it doesn't really matter. I'll just show you any of these really. So let's say this one is that article that you're discussing today. It's on osimertinib in lung cancer. Well, many of our research papers will have a so-called quick take. So the quick take is a brief video describing the study. And so I'll play this brief video just so you can sort of see what one quick take looks like.
Osimertinib is standard of care therapy for previously untreated epidermal growth factor receptor, or EGFR, mutation positive advanced non-small cell lung cancer, but its efficacy and safety as an adjuvant therapy are unknown.
All right, so you can imagine starting Journal Club off with showing that 2-minute video. Now you suddenly brought everyone up to speed, even the people, which was probably most, who didn't actually read the article at home. You can also download the slide set, so that there's a button there, and that includes all the figures from the paper. So that's also a good starting point for the residents who are putting together their slides. I will also show you some other useful material that the residents could use to sort of augment their journal club. So one topic series that the NEJM had a couple of years ago was on the changing face of let me just find it here. So the clinical trials series, and shout if you see it. Let me actually go to here. Here, the clinical trial series. Here we go. So the clinical trial series went through a lot of different aspects of interpreting a clinical trial. It talked about, certain kind of study designs. There's a whole thing on obtaining informed consent. So these are really great articles for the residents that are presenting to read beforehand, so that they can bring some knowledge to the rest of the team. There's also, if I go back to Resident 360, there are also a bunch of discussions that are journal club based. And so you can just search for it really. And here we go. And so some basically residency programs will take a paper and they will be in charge of running a journal club on the site. And so as a resident doing a journal club locally, you can sort of look at how the conversation went on the site and bring some of those topics with you to for discussion at your own journal club. We also had a whole discussion which was on journal club. How do you do it, and what are some of the challenges. So that's also more information that you can look at with your if you're a resident running a journal club. That was the journal club case. All right, case 5. Case 5 is now you're a chief resident in an internal medicine program, and you have morning report every morning at 7:30, and you usually have a good case that you're presenting, and that's great, except that starting at 7:30, there's only 5 to 10 people there, and everyone trickles in, over the next couple of minutes, but you're sort of torn because you don't want those who show up on time to be punished, but you also don't want to start a case and then everyone's kind of lost when they walk in a few minutes late. So you've been doing an image of a day to start you off, so you can do some teaching for a couple of minutes and then start the case 5 minutes later. Problem is you're running low on images. So let's show you some of the image-based material that you can get from NEJM. So there is, I'm going to go back here to the NEJM front page. There is every week an image challenge. You can see it on the right here. And let's do the image challenge. I'm going to ask you to answer this question in a minute on, Christina is making a funny face. This is not a pretty picture. So
not a clinician, not a clinician.
Here's a woman with rheumatoid arthritis presenting with a month history of pain in the right eye. She has stopped immunosuppressive therapy. There was no trauma, and you can see the inflammation, but also the scleral thinning here. So the question is, what is the most likely diagnosis? And what I'll do, just because of time, I will let you ponder what you would have answered. But rather than switch back to my PowerPoint and back here again, let's say we'll answer conjunctival hemorrhage, just for fun. See what people say. Oh, try again. Not the right answer. So you can try again. And I tried this morning. Apparently, this is necrotizing anterior scleritis. And then you get a little bit of a learning point on that. So this is a great source of, and there you can go back and so use prior image challenges for, so this chief resident can use that for their morning report. You can also imagine starting morning report with a question, right? A question of the week and a question of the day, I guess. But we do offer some questions from Knowledge Plus once a week. There's a free question available here. So here's the question of the week. And this is actually from the pain, opioids and pain management module, which is the one that's free. And it's a case of someone who has severe pain, neuropathic pain from diabetes. Also, he has a few other medical problems listed here and takes medications for that. And so a decision is made to initiate chronic opioid therapy. But the question is, which one of the following changes in treatment might you consider with a patient before you prescribe an opioid for his pain? So, this is a long question, and I want to make sure I leave plenty of time for questions. So from you all, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this. Just to say, perhaps you think that we need to change the magnesium for restless legs. We'll switch to something different. Let's see what happens if you click that. And I did not do a good job. My answer was incorrect. We should have switched his medication for his panic disorder. And then there's a very detailed feedback. And in this case, it's discussing the risk of combining benzos and opioids. And it comes with citations. This is the feedback that you would actually get in the question bank itself if you had that. And there's also opportunities to comment and sort of get other people's opinions. So that's another thing that this chief resident could use to start off their morning report. On the topic of morning report, I'll just mention that we also have, if I go back to Resident 360, we have resources for the chief residents so that they don't have to do everything from scratch. So in the learning lab, there is a whole section called Clinical Pearls and Morning Reports. So you can go into this section, and you have a variety here of different topics that you could choose. And let's say you're teaching about congenital adrenal hyperplasia, because that's endocrinology and that's fun. Here you can see the complicated steroid pathway. You can download this, you can use it, and you can look at some of the clinical pearls here, which can be helpful kind of learning points for you to incorporate into your morning report in this case. And so there are even potential morning report questions here for you. So it really gives you a starting point. For chief residents, we also actually have a whole separate product called Chief Chat. And that's basically a private chat room for chief residents where they can talk about their challenges and questions. And recently many of the topics, if not most, have related to COVID-19 challenges. Here's someone asking about how do you do didactics? How do you make them engaging when you're on Zoom? How are you going to do interviews during COVID? So it's really been a useful resource for chief residents. I do want to show one other thing, sort of as we're talking about resources for teaching, which is on Resident 360, available for free, are these interactive learning resources. They are basically resources that are part of other, usually interactive medical cases at the New England Journal, that we have taken out so that you can use them as standalone teaching. So there are some introductory, so let me show you an introductory topic here. For example, you can do a full case, or you can just go and say you want to teach about, I don't know, urine microscopy. And you can see a variety here of, or you can see sort of a whole teaching thing on this, which you can use in your teaching, or you can assign to your residents. And we give you some guidance in the introduction here on how you might use this. With that, just because I was hoping to keep it to around 40 minutes or so, I am just going to mention one last sort of feature, and then I will open it up for questions. So the last topic I just wanted to talk about was sort of teaching clinical, critical thinking or clinical problem solving. And many of you probably, if you read the journal, you're familiar with some of these. I'm going to go down to the clinical cases. So these are either the case records of the Massachusetts General Hospital or the, here we go, the clinical problem solving cases. I think especially the clinical problem solving cases are good because they, you can really go through this in a group and talk about some of the, thinking that might go into someone presenting with these types of symptoms and sort of mimic what's going on in the actual journal, journal article itself. The other and last feature I will talk about are the interactive medical cases. So those are under multimedia, and they are interactive cases where you actually have to go through and make some decisions in the case itself. So here I'm showing one called Breaking a Sweat, which is, here we go, I had started it this morning, but so it'll go through a case presentation with a history, a physical exam, and lab findings, here in this case, imaging, and you will get certain teaching points related to the case. But you will also be asked to sort of make a decision here. So you might, I don't know, stop antibiotics. Oops, I got that wrong. So I have to go back and make another choice. So it's a very good way to teach clinical problem solving. I did not have time to really go through things like we have Journal Watch and your electronic table of contents, things to help you kind of keep up to date on literature. Those are kind of more traditionally available through your most medical journals. So with that, I will actually I'll leave the sharing on in case I need to show something, but I will be happy to take any questions and yeah.
Well, Pete, thank you. That was fabulous and so much. One of the joys of having you walk us through this every few years is that it keeps expanding a little bit. And my reflection, I guess, this year is that it's as much about your learning and all the tools that you can bring to your own learning as it is now about your teaching and what you can adapt and use. And for all of us in medical education, that is a huge amount of time saving, not to sometimes have to make something, a video or an aid of some sort. So I just wanted to point that out. And I would think, though I don't know if you have any metrics, OP, but I think it would seem like in the last 8 months with all of COVID and virtual learning and teaching, has there been an uptick in the use of some of these products, or have you seen any change in how they've been utilized?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I don't have detailed metrics on that. What I will say is, in terms of metrics, which I think is interesting, sort of a little bit to the side of what you were asking me, but talking about metrics is one thing that we've noticed is that these products are really, really popular in areas that may not have as ready availability to medical education expertise or honestly medical expertise. So several parts of the world. We get emails with some regularity from several parts of the world saying like, hey, we've been using this in our medical school curriculum, in our residency curriculum. It's great. Can you add something on malaria or something that we may not be covering quite as well? And I'm sure someone in the big institution has data on what happened after COVID, but I don't have that data.
And did you say, I think this will probably be a common question, were you saying that I believe almost all of what you showed, except for the Knowledge Plus, is generally free of charge once you register?
Yep. So for us at the Brigham, because we have access through our librarians or the medical library of BEI, I don't know how it's done at the Brigham, but we have access to NEJM. We also get access to most of these things, and the exception is Knowledge Plus, and specifically the rotation guides in Resident 360. The rest of Resident 360 is free, but the rotation guides in about a month or so will go behind a paywall.
Yeah. Thank you. Christina, have we gotten any questions from the chat box?
We do. We have a couple of questions in the chat. First, OP, I want to say the thing I really liked about your presentation is that you subtly reminded us that we don't always have to start from the very beginning. If we're looking for something, we might look on here and say, hey, there is this high quality resource or this high quality video that we can use as part of our own teaching. And I think especially as virtual teaching takes more time, takes more effort on the educator, this is a really nice reminder that we can find resources which are already high quality. One question that we had, you talked a little bit about a career module or career resource, and we were wondering, are there tools to build educational portfolios? Is this something where someone could build an educational portfolio or something else?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And, the career resources are more sort of providing information to you as the person seeking information. So, how do you apply for your first job, and how do you sort of sell yourself? How do you choose a specialty? Those kinds of things. There is also a separate part of NEJM group. I only talked about NEJM's education offerings. There's a whole separate part, which is a career sort of forum where you can go and look for job postings and those types of things. We do not have anything to really help you put together an educational portfolio or a CV or anything beyond just sort of general advice about, here's how you sell yourself as someone seeking a job.
Great. And I have two other questions I would love to get addressed. The first one involves you talked a lot about this is free, this isn't free, this is free, this isn't free. Is there any good or clear way that an interested person can sort of identify that early on or know what they would be able to access without additional resources?
Yeah, so I think sort of the summary that I gave to Eric is essentially Knowledge Plus is not free. Everything else is free. And the caveat is, starting January 1st, the rotation guides will no longer be free but everything else is free. So let's say Knowledge Plus and rotation guides are not free. Everything else is free for us as Brigham people because we have access through our library. If there are people on the call who have access through your libraries, it will be free for you also. If you have no access to NEJM at your institution or privately, you're out of luck because you do need some sort of subscription to NEJM, either institutional or individual.
Okay, I think that clarifies, and we appreciate that. One great question from Chuck came in. He wants to know the New England Journal of Medicine has provided family medicine, internal medicine, and PEDS information for several years, and he's curious if there's any movement towards including other specialties in that initiative.
Yeah, so that is a frequent topic of conversation, and I will say just right now we are mostly still focused on those specialties, primarily because that's sort of where our strength and our recognition has been. But honestly, there are sort of less, more sort of financial thinking. If you go into thoracic surgery, you have I don't know how many, like a few thousand people, and in terms of sort of making it an attractive product financially, it probably is not worth it. So for the time being, those are the ones that we're focusing on. I do know that emergency medicine has been one that we've thought about because it's a bigger specialty. And so far we have emergency medicine material embedded within internal medicine and peds. So really meant for people doing a rotation in the emergency room.
Great, and I don't think we have any other chat questions. So I would just say if anyone else has any questions, it's a great time to unmute yourself and share.
Christina, I have a question. Hi, OP, thanks for a wonderful presentation. It's so good to see all the resources that are there. At the BEI, we're trying to start to think less about, we have this service, this service, this service, this service, and more about this concept of a journey, a learner's journey. And that whether you join as a resident or you join as a clinician or you join in any role, that you start on this learning journey. There's a lot of things there that you've shown us that I would love to include in that learning journey. But I don't know what the opportunity is to integrate that into sort of a cohesive path. Could you talk a little bit about how you think about that?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because we started, let me take the example of Resident 360. I mean, that was sort of thinking a little bit similar to what you were saying in that, you know, we realized that we were not a journey. We were really, you're done with medical school, now you're a practitioner. Now we're going to start catering to you. And we sort of at NEJM left everyone else behind. So the Resident 360 sort of started off as a thinking that, okay, we'll cater to some of the more specific needs of the resident. But what we found is that those needs were not specific, that the medical students really appreciated a lot of that material and were as eager, if not even more eager than residents to use it. So one of the sort of things we've learned is that trying to create these products that's like aimed at a niche, that's fine, except that you will get overflow from both sides. And you know, honestly, like I showed you some of the stuff on the Resident 360, I find that really helpful, and I'm not a resident, right? So you know, in terms of sort of creating a very specific path, I think it's we've done some of that, sort of trying to put some material. Here's what works for students. Or in one of our rotation guides where we have educational or interactive educational material, we sort of have it by easy, straightforward, basic to very advanced topics to try to guide that somewhat. I think one of the issues is that each individual learner can be at very different level. They may have very different needs that are not reflected in being a medical student or a resident or whatever. And so we have been carefully avoiding saying, here's for first-year medical students, here's for 30-year residents, because we really feel like that's so individual. And again, there's so much overflow on either side. So I do think it ends up being sort of knowing the person or the group that you're addressing and trying to hit the sweet spot of sort of hitting the zone of proximal development, right, in those learners. And that can be, what's the word I'm looking for? That can be a challenge because you really need to know your learners, but they often know themselves better than you do. So a lot of this is very good for self-study.
And I would say also my experience with Knowledge Plus is that you create some piece of a journey there because you're asked to, as you mentioned, rate your confidence and start at a certain point, and it adapts at least to define your journey a little bit better than the average.
Yep.
I know time is tight here. Any other last questions? Otherwise, we'll wrap up. Just looking at everyone.
Eric,
I want to thank. Oh, go ahead, Nerith.
Just in the spirit of like training the trainers, we said we have access through the library, and I know Sue's there. I just wanted to make sure, how would you instruct somebody to go and get this access? Do they register on the website? Do they go to the proxy? What's the best way? Sue, do you want to take that, or okay? I
can also take it, and Sue, you can correct me if I'm wrong. So if you are either using VPN or you're on site, then it will recognize your what do you call it, address, IP address, and you'll automatically get access. If you want to have access to this at home without using VPN, I believe you have to go on site, create your account, and then you'll have a personal account that you can access from home. Does that sound right to you, Sue?
Yeah, I was just going to add that if you want a specific article from the magazine, in order to authenticate properly, you need to go through the Pike Notes and Medical Library website because of the IP authentication.
Yep. There you go.
Well, again, a big thank you, OP, to all of this. The BEI has no financial connection to the New England Journal, but I will say every time I dig into it, it is a wealth and a depth of knowledge. And I learn more and more, and I think it's a trusted source. So we certainly endorse it for learning. And I just appreciate you walking us through so many of the things probably several of us haven't really explored in great detail, but hopefully will. So I thank everyone for joining us. I welcome you back in about a week for our last one. It'll be Deb Cully, and hope everyone has a great day ahead.